let's start off by talking about the season as a whole, shall we? Because it was one where the expectation heading into it was fairly low, wasn't it? But how do you reflect on it now?
Oh, well, totally agree with the expectations being low. I mean, personally for myself, I was thinking at the start of the season, I'd like top 8. I'd take top 10, after finishing 16th last season and really going out with a whimper as well. It was strange. It was a season of two halves almost, a bit like this season, but, with slightly happier results this time where, we were in touch with the playoffs till I think February-ish last season and then just, absolutely nosedived. So to go from that to starting the season like we did was such a big turnaround. That's what obviously laid the platform for what's come, middle of the season, later end of the season, and now into the playoffs. But to go from where we were to where we are, I didn't see it coming. And I think if we're all being honest with ourselves, very few Sunderland fans would have predicted us to be in the top 6, let alone make the final of the playoffs at the end of the season. So when you take all that into consideration, I think you've got to say this season's been a success, even if we don't end up, on the winning side come whatever it'll be, sort of 5 o'clock-ish on Saturday. We've got to look back at this season with a lot of pride. So it's really, really pleasing as a Sunderland fan.
Yeah, and because Sunderland are obviously such a massive club and, recent Premier League history and what have you, I think a lot of people kind of forget at the start of the season how low the expectations were. Do you see what I mean? And people may look back at it now and go, well, Sunderland's big club, lots of big players, them finishing 4th isn't that much of a surprise, but it genuinely was the case, wasn't it? Especially with Lebris, being a completely unknown quantity in English football. This season has been a resounding success, and it's been a surprising success at the same time, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a good point you make, actually. People I think almost it's easy to skip over last season in your mind. If you think about Sunderland, you think, playoffs this season, playoffs under Tony Mowbray. Obviously, I'm going to say we're a big club, but I think objectively we're a pretty decent sized outfit. Certainly at this level. So yeah, I think, from the outside looking in, it's really, really easy to kind of forget the struggles that we've gone through over the past, well, not the past 12 to 18 months, but, cast your mind back 12 or 18 months and we certainly weren't in a great position. So, it's like I say, it's taken me by surprise, and I would say the vast majority of Sunderland fans, but really, I think if you look at the quality in the squad, it's easy to say this in hindsight, I suppose, but if you look at the quality in the squad that we had at the start of the season, it almost shouldn't have been a surprise. And I think that's probably why Lebris was so calm when he came in, or at least part of the reason why, because, you're right to point out he's, debut season in English football. He's managed it, the top level in France, but he's certainly, I don't think, ever been somewhere where the pressures are quite as intense and unique as they might be in this particular part of the world.
Yeah. He might disagree with that, considering he was apparently sheltering in his house from Lorient fans this time last year, but,
Well, this time next week he might be doing the same from Sunderland fans.
Let's hope that's not the case. But we talk about how successful the season's been. I think it says a lot about how good Sunderland were for 6 months, that you got yourselves in a position where you could be utter tripe for 2 to 3 months at the end of the season and still comfortably get in the playoffs. And that's exactly what you did. But with the form dropping off so badly towards the end of the normal season, of course, Sunderland headed into this with the worst form of any team heading into the playoffs, which is such a crazy stat to read out. But how were you feeling beforehand heading into the actual playoffs?
I was quite relaxed about it, to be honest.
You weren't worried?
Well, worried because it's Sunderland and I know what we're like.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm happy to admit I'm probably in the minority of fans who, were relaxed and calm going in because, a lot of people were, fairly justifiably unhappy with that run of form and really disappointed with the results, the performances, and some of the team selections as well. Rotating players and not exactly naming, full changed 11s, but certainly not naming the best available team every week. But, there was a few of us at Roker Report who were all kind of, singing from the same hymn sheet, where you almost have got to look at it as a bit of a pre-season kind of phase in a strange way, where, You know, like you say, we had not just the playoffs sewn up, but specifically fourth place sewn up for so long that it does put you in a strange position. And I think no matter what level of football you play at, like whether you're a Premier League or Champions League player, right the way down to amateurs on a Sunday morning, if you know the games mathematically don't matter, you're going to struggle to get yourself up for it. You know, if you're playing in the, you know, under 16s or whatever for your local village team, if it's a pre-season friendly, you're not going to try quite as hard as you would for a league game on a Sunday. And I'm sure that goes even more so for players higher up the level than the professionals. Not to say they weren't motivated, but that little extra few percent of edge that you get, you know, when games become really, really important. I think of it, a prime example is Oxford away in that run of 5 losses. You know, that's the game that secured them their championship survival. Of course, they were more up for it than a team who, if they win, stay fourth, or lose, stay fourth. So I always had a bit of a view of it. Yeah, like I say, it was all a preparation period and a time to get players back from injury. And thankfully, the ends kind of justify the means in that sense. And we've got near enough a full squad to pick from for the final. And, you know, now that we've come through the semis relatively unscathed, we can kind of look back at it and say it's worked, but certainly a bit hairy.
Yeah, well, I remember looking on Sunderland Twitter and Lebris was getting stick every single week with the lineups that he was putting out. But now you look at it and you go, it's paid off, hasn't it? I don't think anyone could criticise him for that now. But let's talk about the semi-finals because they've obviously gone very well. And before we talk about that moment, I think we all know what moment I'm talking about here. What did you think of Sunderland's performances overall across the 2 legs?
Well, obviously, a lot of Coventry fans have been saying that they were, you know, by far and away the better side over 2 legs. I can understand that to a degree because they certainly made more of the running in the games than we did. Particularly in, you know, the second half of the second leg, I thought they genuinely were the better side there. You know, I was very worried in the stadium, you know. Obviously, again, we were tense and nervous regardless, but the second half, you could really sense the tide was turning and Coventry were very much on top. And I think, you know, they missed a couple of, you maybe call them half chances, but there were certainly moments that they had where we didn't seem like we had much, you know, in reply to that. The first leg, though, I think Lebris got the tactics and the game plan absolutely spot on. You know, that was a almost perfect away performance in my book. You know, we set out our stall. We lined up defensively really solid, really compact, and we limited everything I think Coventry are best at. You know, bringing Ballard back into the side to be able to deal with the aerial deliveries that we knew we were going to face. You know,
40 clearances over two games isn't bad, is it?
for a guy who hadn't started a game since February as well. Yeah. I mean, it's some performance from him. But yeah, you know, the way that we played in the away leg, I think was as well as we could have played it. And we got the little bit of luck in the end with the mistake from Van Eervacht to allow Mayenda to get the second goal. But you've got to ride your luck at times. I think by and large, you know, we defended excellently and we hit them where it hurts when we had to. Now, I don't know how much we can claim that we exactly created the chance to get the corner, you know, for that moment. But that aside, I think we dealt with them well, but I can certainly see why Coventry feel aggrieved might be the wrong word, but I can see why they feel that they maybe deserved a little more out of it.
Yeah, well, this is something we haven't really spoken about on the actual podcast because we've had so much other stuff to talk about, but I've seen a lot of Coventry fans also insinuating that they dominated the 2 legs, and while they did have more possession and marginally more shots, it wasn't like they were carving out chance after chance, was it? So depends how you look at domination, really. But let's talk about that goal. I assume you were there, Jonny. How was it for you?
Without a doubt, the single greatest moment I've ever witnessed live watching Sunderland. Unbelievable. The absolute pandemonium that just ensued when that ball crossed the line was... I don't know if I've come down from it yet, to be honest. I think I've just been riding...
I think I am.
No, I think I've been riding an adrenaline rush through work all week. It's been brilliant to experience. And, you know, I think of, you know, derby goals that we've scored against Newcastle, great goals by Kieran Richardson, Jermaine Defoe, games that have secured us Premier League survival, last minute winners. Even, you know, I was there when we scored to go 1-0 up against Man City in the League Cup final in 2014 at Wembley. I mean, I think this is better than any of them, to be honest. And I'm sure there's a little bit of recency bias at play, but the circumstances, the context, our run against Coventry being so dreadful for so long, literally the last possible second of the game. Just everything about it was sublime, and I would never have ever wanted to be anywhere else. I'm so glad I was there.
Yeah, I'm glad I was watching it live and watching Ballard pull off his trademark deck chair header where he managed to fold himself in half while doing it. Because at the time,
how
we did our reaction straight off the back of it, and we just thought it had come off his shoulder or his back. But then you watch it back and you go, that is a ridiculously good header, and he's managed to contort his body to basically have his head between his legs while he's doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it coming off the shoulder is exactly what I thought seeing it live as well.
Yeah.
Well, okay, first thought was just, oh my God, yes, for about 5 minutes. But once I calmed down enough to think about the goal, I thought exactly the same. I was like, it did look weird, like his body shape. And obviously you only see it once in real time, and I wasn't exactly 5 yards away looking at it, so didn't have the best view, but I thought he must have shouldered it or something. But yeah, watching it back, the athleticism to get up so high that you have to half your body height to get to the header is already impressive. To fold himself like he did and plant it, off the underside of the bar, right in the top corner as well. I think nobody could possibly blame Ben Wilson in the Coventry goal for not getting to that, because it was just a superb bit of attacking play from Ballard, and richly deserved from him as well. I was so pleased it was him who got to have that moment. I think it really crowned two excellent displays, and he was
the man of the match man of the tie, wasn't he?
I think
two legs.
Maybe did he get man of the match in both legs as well? I think he certainly got one of them.
If he didn't, that's a disgrace.
yeah, exactly. And no better person could that ball have fallen to. So I was chuffed that we scored, but I was chuffed for him as well, because I think he deserves it after everything he's been through.
Yeah. I struggled to touch my toes, let alone manage to go up for a header and do that. But yeah, let's talk about the final itself and your opponents, Sheffield United. What have you made of them this season, and also how they quite comprehensively dealt with Bristol City in the other semi-final?
Well, I mean, taking the semi-final first, I'll be honest, I didn't really give Bristol City much of a chance going into it anyway. I never really have seen anything from them this season that convinced us they were good enough. So I wasn't too surprised. I mean, the manner of the victories was, like you say, pretty comprehensive. So, but that almost, I don't pay attention to that tie almost, because I just don't think that's a true barometer of where Sheffield United are. I think our tie against Coventry was a much truer reflection of what we are as a side, if that makes sense. I think that's much closer to what you'll see from us in the final than what Sheffield United's performances were. But over the course of the season, I think they're a team with a lot of very, very talented players, and I think they're almost too good for this level. But I actually think the way that they set up and the style of play, to me, leaves a lot to be desired. Now, that could just be ignorance on my part from not having watched them enough this season, but certainly in the two games that we played against them, I mean, we beat them at the Stadium of Light on New Year's Day, and the first game earlier in the season at Bramall Lane, I could argue we should have won that game. We missed a penalty, we had a man sent off, and then the game kind of devolved from there and all, became a bit chaotic. But yeah, I just struggle to see what Sheffield United have got in terms of tactics or a system that could give us too much of a problem. I think the issues we're going to have are going to be from dealing with people like Gus Hamer, dealing with Kiefer Moore up front, who's a real handful for any defence at this level. It's those individual performances that worry me more than them as an outfit, I think. Okay.
Yeah, that's fair. And everything you said about the head-to-head games already this season was absolutely true. Sunderland really should have won at Bramall Lane, shouldn't they? And I don't think many Sheffield United fans will completely disagree with you on your statement about them as a unit. So, yeah, completely fair assessments, I think, Johnny. And Dan Ballard versus Kiefer Moore is going to be a fascinating battle on Saturday. I can tell you that much for sure. But, of course, Sheffield United, they're heading into this as the favourites, very much the favourites for the final. Do Sunderland fans like having the underdog tag for this game, do you think?
Well, it depends who you ask. So I think most people who kind of analyse the game will think, yeah, do you know what? It kind of suits us to be the underdogs. We can turn up, spoil the party a little bit, dig in and be resolute, and then try and cause a bit of an upset. And it takes a little bit of the pressure off as well. So with having such a young squad as we've got, obviously a lot of youthful exuberance, but you do worry that maybe in those real pressure moments, could they possibly crack a little bit? Now, they've not shown that up to this point, but you can never say never. However, there's also a large chunk of the fan base who would bristle with indignation at the idea of mighty Sunderland ever being the underdogs to anybody and playing second fiddle in any contest, even if you put us up against Man United, Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool. So I don't want to play us down too much in case I get sort of chased around the streets with pitchforks and torches. But my personal opinion is I think it suits us. And I do agree as well that we are, the underdogs. I do make Sheffield United favourites just because, like I say, I think the quality they've got could easily be enough to see them home. But I think being slight underdogs might not do us too much harm, I think, going into this game.
Interesting. Well, the bookies and the general consensus is that Sheffield United are more likely to win, but from what I'm seeing, just speaking to people who are complete neutrals on this game, it seems like the neutrals want Sunderland to win. And I guess the reason for that is because Sheffield United have recently been in the Premier League, or a couple of times in the Premier League. Sunderland, obviously a massive club, haven't been in the Premier League for a while. So with that in mind, how do you feel about that, being the team that the neutrals seemingly want to win? Well, apart from anyone in the northeast area who's not a Sunderland fan, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I was going to say I've got some mates and relatives who support Newcastle and Middlesbrough who might take umbrage with you suggesting that we're everyone's team. But I mean, it's a bit of a strange position to be in, to be honest, because I feel like certainly when we were in League One and obviously battling for promotion, I think it was 4 years it took us to get out in the end. It felt very much the opposite, where everyone kind of wanted to see it'd be quite funny to see such a big club struggle to get out of this league and lose the playoff finals and lose semi-finals and stuff. So, we had to develop a bit of a thick skin at that level because, understandably we were a massive scalp for most teams, and kind of every fan base was like, right, let's get our piece of Sunderland. Let's show them what this division's all about. So to be potentially the second team for people in the finals, a bit of a novel experience, but we'll see how much we feel about it come full time in the final, because I don't know yet whether it's a blessing or a curse, because I'm so used to analysing everything through the superstition of, well, we never win there or we never beat them. Don't know how this one goes, so we're all going to discover it together.
Well, let's get back to what we were talking about earlier with both of your respective playoff records, because Sunderland's is pretty bad. 1 win from 8 in the playoffs. Somehow not as bad as Sheffield United's, of course. Never won in the playoffs in 9 attempts. When I read out that stat, 1 win from 8, does that bring back some painful memories for yourself?
Yeah, some horrific memories of the 2019 playoff final against Charlton at Wembley. Speaking of last-minute goals, and was it 91st or 92nd minute or whatever it was, goal that consigned us to a 2-1 defeat. My eyes may have got a little bit, moist leaving the stadium that particular day. Maybe not helped by, a few beverages and refreshments beforehand, But yeah, I mean, some awful, days we've had in that time. I mean, just before my time was the 98 playoff final, funnily enough, against Charlton again at Wembley, where, through normal time, extra time and the penalty shootout, we managed to put the ball in the net 10 times and still come out on the losing side, which is some going. But I think the big thing for me when I look back at the playoff record is, actually, such a substantial chunk of our playoff appearances have come in the past 7 years. I think we're on a run of something like 5 appearances in the playoffs in the last seven attempts, I think, unless I'm really mistaken. So it would have been, 2019, 2021, 2022.
That sounds right now that you say it.
23, and then this year. So there we go. There's 5. I know Sunderland. Passed that test. But yeah, so many of those appearances have come so recently that actually a lot of the same players who were involved are still at the club. I'm thinking of the likes of, obviously, Luke O'Nien, Dan Neil, Anthony Patterson, even, Dennis Cirkin, Trey Hume. These players have been through at least one, if not two or three playoff campaigns now. So in a strange way, it almost gives me more belief because they've now, they've felt what it's like to lose a semi-final and be disappointed. They've felt what it's like to lose a final and be disappointed. Some of them have felt
one way of looking at it, Johnny. The other way is
really
it's not going to happen again.
Yeah, they're really, really good at getting knocked out. But they've been through these type of games now, and a lot of them have experienced a Wembley win against Wycombe in 2022. So I think you can look at it from that angle and think, look, they know what it's about now. They've got that experience. None of it's a surprise. But then obviously, like you say, the other end of that particular spectrum is, you're really, really good at not getting promoted from the playoffs. So you're probably going to do it again.
I suppose on the flip side, though, in the League One playoffs, certainly Sunderland were the favourites in all of them, weren't they? Not on this occasion. So maybe that's something that will go in your favour. Let's go back to talking about the Blades. Is there a player from them who worries you the most? If so, who would you say?
I mean, definitely, Gus Hamer takes a lot of the plaudits and gets a lot of the headlines, probably rightly so. I think he's a brilliant footballer. I think Vinny Souza in the midfield, he could be a real problem for us because I think, we generally tend to be more of a counter-attacking side, but a lot of our best players are in the midfield. I'm thinking Enzo Lefebvre, I'm thinking Joe Bellingham, I'm thinking Dan Neil, even Chris Rigg, who, has faded a little at the end of the season, but still a talented lad. If Vinny Souza is really on his game, I think he's going to be a big problem because he can stop us getting out and he can stop us playing. I think back to Isidore's goal, the first goal we scored in the first leg against Coventry. That through ball that Enzo Lefebvre plays when he's right in that middle pocket of space. If you've got somebody who's just snuffing that out and sniffing the danger out constantly, I think you remove a big avenue for our goals because we're such a good counter-attacking team, but you can't counter-attack if you can't break the lines. And when you've got somebody who's as good at that as he is, I think that could be a big problem. But Kiefer Moore deserves a shout as well because you can maybe argue about his sort of grace and sort of aesthetic nature, but he's big and he knows how to use it. And something that we've struggled with at times this season has been sort of lofted balls into the box. We've given away goals late on in games where we've kind of retreated into our shell a little bit and then allowed teams to, we've kind of thought, right, let's pack the box, let them put the balls in, we'll just deal with them. It's not always been the case. It's something we have struggled with. So if he's on it and they're able to get balls onto his head in the box, then that obviously is another route for them to cause us some trouble. So I'm hoping that Dan Ballard can keep him tucked away safely in the back pocket for 90 minutes, but it remains to be seen.
As well as keeping himself tucked away while, folding himself in half at the same time. Let's talk about who we think is going to be in the starting 11 then for Saturday. I think the back four pretty much picks itself at this stage, doesn't it? With Hume, O'Nien, Ballard and Cirkin. The midfield, I presume, will also be pretty self-explanatory in itself. It has been a 4-4-2 in the playoffs, hasn't it? Not something Lebris has gone for all season long, but do you think he'll go with the 4-4-2 again?
This is where I find it tough to call, to be honest, because I think you can, whether it's a 3 or a 4, you're going to see basically the same names in there. But how they actually line up is the question, because I think, the size of the Wembley pitch, it's a big old pitch. And even in the home leg against Coventry on the Tuesday night, there were a lot of moments where I thought that pairing of Neil and Joe Bellingham in the midfield, they were really struggling to, shuttle left, shuttle right, try and cover those gaps while also being able to get on the ball and make things happen. So if I was Lebris, I think I'd go to a 3. But also, if I was Lebris, I probably wouldn't have gone to a 4 in the first leg. So don't give me the keys to the dressing room. But yeah, I mean, like I say, I think either way, you're going to be seeing Lefebvre, you're going to be seeing Neil and Job, whether it's a 3 or a 4. So whether Lefebvre ends up shunted out to the wing or gets to come in and play in the middle, they're going to be the names. And then the only question that remains then is just whether, again, if it's a front 2 or a front 3, whether we see Mundle come back in to start, whether he's fit enough to start, which could be the determining factor in whether we go with a 4 or a 3. And then, do you go with Isidore or Mayenda through the middle, or both? So Mayenda can easily, push out to the right wing. He could even play on the left. Isidore's played off the left before. Patrick Roberts then maybe drops out, but...
Yeah, I, from what I've seen of the second legs, I thought Mayenda was probably Sunderland's best player going forwards, because the number of times he managed to take the ball from deep and dribble past several players was ridiculous. Isidore, we know what he can do, so it feels harsh not to play either of those two. The player who I think is almost guaranteed to start, but I would have question marks because I don't think he's played very well, is probably Patrick Roberts on the right, because he's not really done much at all in these two legs, has he?
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you in that I probably wouldn't play him, but I also think he will start. And I think the reason he'll start basically is because he's so good at covering ground and he grafts a lot defensively, which obviously isn't your immediate priority in a right winger necessarily. But certainly when we've played the 4, his defensive work has then allowed that front two to have the license to stay a little bit further forward, to stay on the shoulder a bit more, and then obviously take advantage in behind when we have won the ball back and managed a quick transition. But I think as well, the other issue you've got to consider is we actually haven't got many pacey forward options. So Mundle, Mayenda and Isidore, all absolutely rapid, brilliant players, great options. If you start all 3 of those and you need a goal with 15 minutes to go, or you get into extra time, and then all of a sudden you turn into your bench and you're thinking, blimey, I haven't got much to bring on here in terms of genuine pace to be able to go on and turn the game. So and
ultimately that's how Sunderland are probably going to play. If they play it exactly like how they did in the 2 semi-finals, you expect them to be on the break. Yeah, and you need pace for that, don't you?
Yeah, and I mean, all season long, we've tended to average, less than 50% possession. We've tended to be a side that wants people to come on to us and then exploit that space in behind. So obviously you don't want to be too negative in your planning and thinking about, the 120 minutes when you're picking your starting 11, because you want to win the game in normal time. But there would be a part of me that does think, maybe do we drop Isidore, put Mayenda through the middle, because I totally agree. I thought he was fantastic across both legs of the semi-final. Keep Isidore on the bench because his explosiveness and finishing ability late on in a game could make a massive difference. But, it is a tough one. And again, I'm glad I'm not Regis Lebris going into this game.
Who's going to be Sunderland's key player on Saturday, Johnny?
Well, it's either Enzo Lefebvre or Romain Mundle, depending on the team sheet. I think Lefebvre showed across the 2 legs of the semis why he's as highly valued and rated as he is. I think it was something like 10 chances created across the 2 legs, covered 24 kilometres of distance. Obviously, you got the 2 assists, but to create 10 chances across 2 games while playing out of position in a massively defensive setup. That's why if we go up, he's going to cost us 20 million quid. And that's why he's reportedly on £80,000 a week on his contract at Roma. Those are the numbers you've got to deliver if you want that kind of money. And he's delivered them in a huge moment. Romain Mundle as well. I thought we don't win that second leg, or score the goal. We don't score the goal in extra time if he doesn't come on the pitch, because I think he just changed the game almost, on a sixpence. He came on and all of a sudden they had something to worry about going the other way. It wasn't just come on to us. It was, hang on, Mundle's on now. If he isolates a full-back and beats him, you're in all sorts of trouble. He's a good finisher as well. He's not got as many goals as he'd like this season because he's struggled with injuries, a couple of hamstring injuries that have kept him out for, massive chunks of the season. But if he is fit and if he does start, he's got the potential to really, give their defenders a torrid afternoon, because he can go both ways as well, which is something that's massive. Something that, Jack Clarke, who obviously left us at the start of the season, he was Mundle's kind of his successor. Clarke struggled a lot in his early days because he could only go one way. He could never go outside. He was always inside, always wanted to have a shot. Mundle from day one has been able to do both. And when you can go either way, it's almost impossible for a defender to funnel you in the right direction because you're a threat in both sides. So yeah, for me, they're the two key players. And obviously defensively, I think Dan Ballard showed over the 2 legs of the semi-final. And I was going to say we've waxed lyrical about him enough. I almost don't think we have. You can never do that justice, but he's shown why he's such a massive presence in that back four. So he's going to be huge. Like I say, with Kiefer Moore in the Sheffield United front line, he's going to be huge for our chances as well.
Yeah, it didn't really click with me that Lefebvre basically set up all 3 goals, didn't he? And I know people are going to talk about the Van Eyck one and say, that was him who set that up. But he was the one who was closing him down, wasn't he?
Yep.
And then obviously he got the factual assists for the other 2. So yeah, that goes to show what he can do in those big moments. And that's why it's obviously a good shout that he's going to be the key player on Saturday. Final question then, Jonny. If you are celebrating next Saturday and Sunderland do get back to the Premier League, how do you think you would do back in the top flight?
No. We're all just thinking about winning the final, yeah? We're all pretending next season doesn't exist because I don't know if you can tell from that preamble, but I'm not massively confident.
I don't think anyone is nowadays, are they? That's the sad fact of the matter is that you get promoted and you're like, oh shit, we've got to play in the Premier League
exactly.
now. Which always used to be a great thing, but now you're like, I don't really want to go there.
Yeah, I think Leeds have got the best chance of staying up out of the already promoted sides. I think out of the rest, I think we've probably got the best chance. I still don't think we'll have enough in the end. I think we probably would get relegated unless we manage to really nail the transfer market. Because our scouting and recruitment's been part of the reason why we've risen from League One to where we are. So obviously, they've got it in them to be able to pluck those kind of gems out for the, not too much money and gel them in. But in the absence of managing to do, probably 2 or 3 ridiculous transfers, I think we're going to struggle. But I think, we've got a cracking academy. We've got a young side who theoretically should keep improving and, already be better next season than they were this season. We've obviously got big stadium, big fan base, a lot of history in the club. So that helps in terms of recruitment. But I just think the gap's so big now. I mean, it's a legitimate possibility that the Europa League finalists are going to be 16th and 17th in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So you're asking a team who was in League One 3 seasons ago, oh, don't worry, lads, you only have to be better than 2 of the best teams in Europe. Technically, if we ignore the league performances. But, so that I think that just shows you where the gap is. So I'm just, like I say, I'm taking things one step at a time. I'd just be celebrating winning the final and enjoying the day. Yeah. Not thinking too much about the inevitable beatings in 4 or 5 months' time.
Yeah, but particularly probably going to be at the hands of Newcastle as well if you do go up, which is just, the journey's better than the destination.
If they could stop being good and not win any more trophies, that would be great for my mental health, actually.
As I say, journey's always better than the destination nowadays, isn't it? But I completely agree with a lot of what you say, Jonny. In fact, I would go as far to say that if for some reason, let's say Man City got kicked out of the league, which isn't actually as impossible as it sounds, but say all 4 of the top 4 this season got promoted, I think Sunderland would actually have a better chance of staying up than Burnley and Sheffield United. And any Burnley or Sheffield United fans who are annoyed with me for that, I'll explain more in the preview show on Friday. So that gives you an excuse to tune in right there, doesn't it? Jonny, how will you be celebrating on Saturday if Sunderland do win?
Drinking a simply unhealthy and ridiculous amount of alcohol anywhere in the London area that'll have us after that game.
Please drink responsibly. Jonny, thank you so much for your time today, mate.
Yeah, cheers, mate. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having us on.
Good luck on Saturday. Although I did say to Nick on the show we did last Saturday, good luck, but I don't want that to be interpreted as me having a bias to either team heading into the final. I'm completely neutral on the matter. I want everyone to have a nice time. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. This has been Jonny from the Roker Report. We'll be back again on Wednesday, where we'll be doing our expert preview with 2 very special guests. So we look forward to seeing you then for that. This has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks, and a big thank you for listening.